pledge, please.
I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength, defend our unity, and uphold our common and glory. So help me God.
Thank you. Please be seated. I didn't speak into the mic while saying the pledge. I just wanted to be sure that we were all saying it. Thank you. This is the 5th regulatory conversation we'll be having, I think, within the last 2 years, which came about as a result of issues that arose in the economy, and we felt that as an integrity organization, we had to, call for conversations, have discussions around such issues, and, find a way forward. Now, this is the 5th one. It's themed the National Integrity Barometer, a roadmap for 2020. So we're going to be having a lot of discussions on what we had done in the past and what you think we should be looking at going into 2020, so we're able to better address issues that are pertinent to or that touch our lives. I'd quickly like to call on the Managing Director, Chief Executive Officer of the Integrity Organization, Mr. Olusoji Apampa, to give the keynote address. Thank you.
Before I go on, I would like to recognize some of the people who are with us today. First, I would like to recognize our very own director, Mrs. Toki Mabogunje, who is now the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Please, a round of applause for her. She is only the 3rd woman in 131 years to become president of the Lagos Chamber, and she's the youngest woman ever to be bestowed with this honor. So please, a round of applause for her as well. I would like to recognize the special advisor to the Director General of NAFDAC, Mr. William Effiok, who is also with us. And we have representing the Inspector General of Police, ACP Lennox Taylor. Please, a round of applause for him as well. We have the chairman of the ICPC, represented by Mrs. Adenike Lawal. Dr. Wale Ige is the Lagos Liaison Coordinator of NDLEA. He's also here with us. A round of applause for him. We have Abimbola Babalola representing the General Counsel of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Where are you? Okay. We have Nwachukwu Victor, who is representing the Executive Secretary of the Investment Promotion Council. You're welcome, sir. Dr. Abdullahi Lawal from Federal Ministry of Health, Port Health. Ibrahim Umar from NIMASA. Tolulope Agunloye from Budget. Okay, thank you very much. We recognize you. And from Policy Alerts, we have Mr. Usen here. Yes, you're welcome. And so also, just to let you know that we have a hashtag. Oh, and our very own Miss Yemisi Ransom Kuti also joining us from Triple NGO. You're very welcome, Ma. The hashtag for today is hashtag RC5 or just hashtag regulatory conversations. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, building integrity in Nigeria. Nigeria is turning a very gentle corner in its fight against corruption, meaning progress may be slow, but it is, however, steady. This fact is not appreciated and would probably never be fully appreciated if all you do is follow the trend analysis of the Corruption Perceptions Index from Transparency International. No other global ranking has stigmatized Nigeria and Nigerians around the issue of corruption as much as the TI CPI has done over the years. Every year, this index tells the world that your country stinks, but it fails to tell you where the stench is coming from, why it is lingering, or what you need to do to free yourself of it. Our policymakers blow hot and cold when a new ranking is released, depending on whether we have moved up or we have moved down the table. But truth is that it has been an excellent advocacy tool for drawing global attention to the issue of corruption, but a lousy tool for setting out what policymakers must do to reduce corruption. The first installment of the Corruption Perception Index in 1995, which did not include Nigeria, screamed that Indonesia was the worst in the world. And the very next year, Nigeria was added to the table, and Nigeria began to be called the most corrupt country in the world, simply because it was worse than Indonesia, and no country worse than it had been added so far. So we saw over the years that depending on what country was added, Nigeria's ranking could go up or it could go down. It took our policymakers much longer to figure that out. Since the country first appeared in the index in 1996, Nigeria has been in the bottom third of the league table, scoring 0.69 out of 10 that year, but by 2019, scoring 28 out of 100. The fact that Nigeria scored 10 out of 100 in 2001 and steadily improved to a score of 28 out of 100 in 2016 did not really count for much in the global opinion of the levels of corruption in the country. The CPI data comes from a survey of surveys and has a typical lag time of 2 to 3 years. So what is reported in 2019 could have come from perceptions as far back as 2016. Transparency International has done the world a great service by bringing the issue of corruption to the front burner at a time when even the World Bank would not dare mention the dreaded C word before its clients and financiers. However, the time has come to seek more constructive, locally constructed alternatives that serve as a guide, pointer, or barometer, better able to reflect more effectively Nigeria's changing circumstances. In particular, Nigeria and Nigerians need less of the bashing that the corruption narrative brings and more of the inspiration that integrity building induces. It is for this reason that the Integrity Organization is announcing its introduction of a National Integrity Barometer. This barometer seeks to highlight what works, why it is working, and signal policy options that could scale up the impacts and learning. The barometer will allow Nigerians to see where integrity building has been weak or strong at the aggregate levels of business, government, and society, and then drill down from there to the underlying corruption risks that have either been mitigated effectively or not to produce the specific score they are reviewing. This way, they would see with evidence what ministry, department, or agency of government, or what sector, or what geography, or what entity type, or entity size, or transaction type was most or least vulnerable to a specific corruption risk, and how well or poorly integrity had been built through effective mitigants. This is what produces a barometer whose data can be analyzed for clear policy options to improve integrity. This is the time for Nigeria, stereotyped as global leader in corruption, to create a new narrative for itself by being global leader in building integrity. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, this is not wishful thinking, as Nigeria indeed already has a model or prototype that works. The Maritime Anti-Corruption Network is a grouping of over 120 global shipping companies representing about 33% of global tonnage and over 75% of the container trade. And they approached the government of Nigeria with a complaint that the levels of corruption at the seaports and terminals were unbearable. This took place in 2012. With support from the UNDP, TUGA, ICPC, and others, corruption risk assessors were trained in 2013. And by 2014, integrity plans had been developed in order to carry out remedial actions. One of the most important findings was that there was a need for standard operating procedures to be articulated so that all users of the ports and terminals would know how the agencies were expected to do their work, what it would cost, against what timelines, in order to fix process weaknesses for vessel and cargo clearance. They also agreed a grievance reporting mechanism to be used where there are disputes or where an agency failed to live up to the terms of the standard operating procedures. The arrangement was launched in 2016 by His Excellency, the Vice President of Nigeria, and commitment to the arrangement was signed up to by the heads of all the agencies present at Nigeria's seaports and terminals. Today, all of this can be viewed through the Port Service Support Portal housed by the Nigeria Shippers Council and available at https://www.pssp.ng. That's Port Service Support Portal.ng. As we all know, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So in late 2017, Richbury Tankers had a vessel call at the Forcados terminal where an immigration officer took issue with the seaman's passports presented by the crew and was ready to surcharge the vessel $8,000 per head of seaman. The vessel was detained. After a 24-hour standoff, the company decided to report the incident through the grievance reporting system, which took it straight to the top of immigrations. By the way, the system, once you make a report in there, it goes to the top of all the agencies present at the ports. All of them see the complaints at the same time. So the Comptroller General of Immigrations waded in, recalled the officer concerned to Abuja, and launched an investigation. The vessel was released after they looked into it and was sailing out of Nigerian waters within 24 hours of making the report, without paying a penny in what it deemed to be an illicit demand. They did not have to pay. The company made more port calls in Nigeria after that and successfully used the mechanism two more times, after which they don't even say anything anymore when they come to Nigeria. They sail in and sail out without incident. Now, has corruption disappeared from the ports? No. But is integrity being built at the ports? Yes. So, except you have a system that can track what is being built and what it is able to do, it will never show up in a corruption perceptions index for the next 10 years. And therefore, as a country, we're doing ourselves a great disservice if we cannot tell our own story of success. Other companies have tried it too, and today about 400 companies have used that reporting mechanism successfully with the issues resolved. With similar results, that they managed to avoid giving in to what they considered to be corrupt demands. But the question is, if it can work at the seaports and terminals, isn't it the same agencies at the airports? Shouldn't we be able to copy a success story from the seaports and use it in the airports? The immigrations that dealt so decisively with such an issue in the seaports and terminals, can they not also deal with such issues in passports, since passports is under them? And by the way, many Nigerians look at the police force, and I know UNODC and Bureau of Statistics just came up with a new corruption survey which listed the police as the biggest culprit for corruption cases. That is based on the experience of Nigerians, followed by the judiciary, for instance. However, the success story at the seaports also includes the police force. So the good practice also includes the police force. Question is, can we not have the same good practices that are used at seaports now used on the roads and used on other issues? So our argument is that perhaps it is time to wean ourselves off corruption perceptions and move more towards integrity building and having the ability to measure progress with building integrity. So, but we shouldn't argue too much with the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index because it was never designed to capture such things. But this would be exactly the kind of thing that the National Integrity Barometer is being created to do. This is the very purpose for which it is being established. Of course, the success story that I've given you is elitist. Had it been applied to, say, NAFDAC or the tax authorities, yes, many more Nigerians will agree with us that, okay, then we agree, things are changing. Or if you applied it to something at local government level or state level instead of federal all the time, then again, ordinary people will agree with you that the story is changing. But we believe that we should be able to take the mechanics of the success from this one that has gone slow and steady and been building since 2012 and see how we can apply it to other areas. I also hear the criticism that the example given took several years to actualize, and even more questions about the presence or absence of political will to make it happen. So, what are the components of such a system? Number one, risk assessments. Now, risk assessments, if you do it the way the consultants do it, can take you a long time. Or you can follow the system that has been evolved by Integrity during an intervention supported by the UNDP called Track, Analyze, Map, and Expose Corruption Risks, which is Tame Corruption Risks. Basically, we put together a compendium of corruption risks, generic risks involved with doing business in a certain location in Nigeria, or in a certain sector. Yes, we know that certain sectors are more vulnerable than others. Certain locations are more vulnerable. Certain company sizes are more vulnerable. The bigger companies can withstand demands from their regulators in ways that MSMEs cannot withstand. So we know that entity size also matters. And we can use crowdsourcing to continue to find new mutations of these corruption schemes, because they will certainly mutate. As you discover them, they will change them. And we can build up a repository of that and map them to what the generic antidotes should be. Meaning that you end up in the passport office, and depending on how they are behaving or the process they present to you, you already know whether there's a corruption risk or not. And you can also do your own rating of the agency there and then from your cell phone. So anyone, any Nigerian can become a mystery shopper in any of our service delivery agencies. The system would give guidance on both actual situations and predict where there might or might not be issues that we should engage. Another feature is in creating standard operating procedures and a grievance reporting mechanism that works. And we know now that there's PSSP.ng for things at the ports. We know that Payback has launched reportgov.ng, where you can report government, but there's nothing for business and civil society generally that we know. We have egunje.info that we will also like to continue to promote, and is linked to ICPC. So if you make a report on egunje.info, ICPC will also have access to that report eventually. So what are we saying? The ultimate would be when there is enough coverage of entities, of government, business, and society to get a sense of the overall temperature, pressure, environment of integrity building in Nigeria. So partnerships, and especially partnership with the Nigerian people and with the Nigerian government, would be the primary keys to success. So partnerships, and especially partnership with the Nigerian people and with the Nigerian government, would be the primary keys to success. So let me end this speech by thanking our funders, the UK Department for International Development, for all their support in 2019 through Action Aid Scrap C project, the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, NESG, ProShare, and Business Day newspapers. Next year, Integrity will be turning 25 years, and we look forward to presenting the first set of data from the National Integrity Barometer this time next year as one of the ways we will be celebrating this milestone. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we have seen, we can say that the glass is half empty, or we can choose to call it half full when it comes to the matter of building integrity in Nigeria. Is there a top geography, or a top sector, or MDA, or transaction type, or entity size that you would like to see the barometer address in 2020? Now is your chance to set the agenda. I thank you for listening. Permit me to invite Mrs. Toki Mabogunje, who is the president of Lagos Chamber of Commerce. I will never stop getting used to saying those two things in the same sentence, to say a few words as a partner on this program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Soji. I will rest on the established protocols. I'm pleased to be here today. Lagos Chamber of Commerce being a premier advocacy group for the business community. We see ourselves as the voice of business, very much a big part of what is being done by the Integrity Organization around issues of anti-corruption and building integrity. But I thought in this goodwill message, sometimes when you listen to the CEO speak, what he speaks about is a little bit up there. And some people are trying to understand what's going on with maritime and customs and immigration. That's on the really high level. But let me talk about what happens at the grassroots. So I was sharing with him this morning that building integrity is really key. When you build integrity, you improve the quality of citizens that you have in a country. And when you improve the quality of citizens you have in a country, all of your transactions, your relationships, your participation in the international community becomes that much more improved. And so I gave the example of 2013 or thereabouts, where I work as a business development consultant. So the USAID asked me to work with some farmers. These farmers are cocoa farmers in Ondo State, and I'm talking about real grassroots. And so in working with these farmers, we were trying to explain to them why they had a complaint that they were being exploited over their commodities, and people were paying less than market price. Now, what they didn't understand was that by mixing good seed with bad seed, you cannot be paid top dollar for a consignment that is already tainted. They actually didn't understand it. And so we had the commodity buyers come in and explain to them, and apparently for the first time, they could see pictorially how a cocoa pod becomes a bar of chocolate. They had absolutely no idea. And so by being shown that process and how bad produce will lead to bad product, for the first time, these farmers understood how lack of integrity affects profitability. It affects your trust in the market. You cannot relate with financial institutions. You cannot get good partners, technical or otherwise. And that if they stuck to being excellent and producing good seed, then they would get top dollar. The next question was, but what do we do with the seeds that didn't come out right? The fact is there's still a market for those ones. They put cocoa in cosmetic products, making soaps and creams and so on. And so I found that when we had to do this in Ondo State, we had to do it again in Oyo State. I found that there is actually right now a situation where we actually have generations of Nigerians below the age of 30 who cannot define integrity. They actually have no idea what it means. And so, as Lagos Chamber of Commerce, we are so glad to be part of this project, this program. We see it as one that will produce generations of citizens who have a very high integrity index. We believe it's the future of Nigeria. As you increase integrity, the corruption index itself diminishes. And all I can say to us is, I really believe that this is the beginning of something good, something new. And from the Lagos Chamber, it's all the best to all of us. Sometimes when you are involved in projects like this that have very long-term results, sometimes you get discouraged. And I say to everyone here, do not be discouraged. We will begin to see the results over time, and they will be quite positive. Thank you very much.
Please, another round of applause for her, please. I would like to invite Ms. Nkechi Onyenso of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. She's the head corporate services and the facilitator of the Governance and Institutions Policy Commission, just to say a few words as well. Yes. Please, a round of applause for her. Mind your step.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you regards from the Nigerian Economic Summit Group on behalf of the chairman, Mr. Aswe Gudalu, management and staff of NESG. We are happy and proud to associate with Integrity International because the NESG is important, interested in programs and organizations that build the Nigerian economy. And we all agree that integrity is one of the pillars in which we would use to build the Nigerian economy. We have a policy commission that's entirely dedicated to governance, and one of the aspects of that is integrity building and performance management. So the barometer is a very interesting thing that we would like to work with you on. So I just want to thank everybody for coming here today, and I wish us fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so on your tables now, you should have a piece of paper with just one word written on it. So you probably have a word like transaction type, or geography, or entity type, and so on. So I would like to just explain what we're about to do now, because now we want to move into the group sessions just for about 40 minutes. We want to quickly understand from each of us what is the priority. So I'm holding up for my table transaction type. We know that competing for a federal post is a very risky transaction type when it comes to corruption. Retirement is not as risky, but getting in is very risky for corruption. We know that procurement is a very risky transaction type. Even disposal of assets is very risky. And we want to gather all of these together and use that really to set priorities for 2020 so that our own engagement with the public and with you can be held accountable throughout 2020. You said you would work on this. What have you done? And we want to be able to make sure that it does result in tangible, measurable progress that reflects in the Integrity Barometer. That those will give us the first round, since we can't do everything on our own. I don't know, have I left out any group? Yes, there's sector. So the corruption that you expect from, which sector would I put it? The education sector, or health sector. Well, there's no sector that is free. But education or health sector may not be as much as the oil and gas sector, depending on how you define corruption, whether the one with the large amounts or the one with small amounts but very frequent. So transport sector, all sorts of sectors. I think we should look at the sectors and then prioritize which ones we should be talking about. Is the assignment clear? Okay, so we'll just spend 30 minutes on that assignment, and we will collate, because we want each table to come back with just one that is agreed at the table.
In Netherlands that bans any through their value chain. Wow. It must be corrected. You can't use underage to be part of your labor, regardless of whatever. So you are liable, and that being liable is what has given us the opportunity to now say what you are doing in Nigeria is wrong. If you cannot do it in your own country, then so by that you can see that they are going to sit tight now. Definitely. But if you have gone to the parents don't know anything. They don't know anything. So they can tell the parents who won't do business with you except let your children go to school. So you can see the impact. So you can see that we have started from the top. And it's affecting the lower. It has to go down. Definitely. But if you start from the lower. You have won the case. I think you have bought me over with that.
Yeah.
Let's say about this 10,000 Arab million.
The traders' money. Yes.
That traders' money is not transparent.
Of course.
Only selected people that benefited.
Yes, that's true.
Secondly, you find that also that those who are benefited
they have to wear uniform. That means they have been told before. That is, if it is not transparent, then that means corruption will breed in. So, like me, if I'm your brother and you are my brother, you just tell me that something is happening somewhere there, and this is the uniform, and then it will just go like that, and that is what they should have corrected. By not giving out things, by selectively, then they breed corruption. To eliminate corruption, you should have let everybody know, and those who are actually in it will get it. Not just on that day to make a road show.
It is MS, micro, small, and medium. So it's MSME, yes. So what we are saying is create an enabling environment for the micro, small, and medium enterprises through transparent procedures known to all. So it can be on the government website, it can be there. That's what we are agreeing with. Yes, I'm aware of that. It was mentioned at the last, yes. So it is known to all. That's the basic thing. Everybody understands you are going to pay this. It's like CSA. I have it here now. The steps for everything, the amount you collect, yes, and who can register it for you and this. So you not say it has to be done through a lawyer, it has to be through an agent. Yes, so there's openness and we know who. So we have okay, sir.
That was there.
Yes. Do it, and the process is explained stepwise.
Interface of the human beings is key, but it's not one-sided. It's either through the customers or through the employees. But to define the entity size, you need to have just a metric.
I think since the moderator mentioned that we are not restricted to businesses, and for instance, there are organizations that will not have the traditional customers. Integrity organization, for example, will not have traditional customers. People that will walk in and say, "I want to get something done." Do you understand? Yes, they will have people they refer to, maybe the public. Do you get? But they are not traditional. So maybe we should use employee in that regard.
So we want to define our entity size by employee. So if you divide it by employee, we have to categorize it.
I'm wondering, is that still not part of what they asked us to discuss?
Maybe they should too.
Because
they should implement
if
the
there's no
TSA as
integrity
well.
and then they want us to talk about it.
And then there should be measured that whatever allocation you have generated, please give us on the paper, on the blueprint on the paper, how you have spent it. If you are going to lie that it's so street, you have repaired the road, we see it now, how much you have spent on it. We see everything there. How many vehicles you have bought for the security, what you have done in the private primary schools. Private. And just 1,000 public primary school. And these schools are dilapidated. Their buildings are bad. They are so bad that
the private schools
public schools, the primary school. Sanwo-Olu had to take charge now to reconstruct and repair all the 1,000 primary, because people have virtually left the public primary schools, the schools that we went to. That
constitutionally, the primary education is the responsibility
of the local government.
Yeah. Both the families and the schools hold an important role to play in the upbringing of children, especially values, because value starts from home. The way your parents behave, it might manifest in you going out. You might also act what you see, like what my colleague said now. What you see, how your parents behave, you come out, you also can display that kind of either positive or negative attitude. So we need to build first the values from home. Also, schools has a major role also to play because we spend more time in schools, like kids. I think we spend more time in school than with our parents. We spend close to 5 hours, 6 hours, or 8 hours, coupled with extra moral classes. So they learn more from their teachers. So their teachers, they have a big role to play in impacting values on teens and teenagers.
People living in places like Port Harcourt, Bayelsa, Warri areas where you have the oil and gas, sectors. Also, because these places are more exposed, so I think that they're more susceptible to high cost of living and high pressures, and so it places a demand on them to be a little extra. So thank you so much.
So smaller companies tend to be more corrupt than the big companies in terms of their, size and revenues and all. So with good corporate governance, even if everything still boils down to personal values, but smaller companies are still, tend
more
to
vulnerable. Yes.
So the family plays a major role in the integrity level of the nation. Thank you.
No matter what it is you are doing, if you are productive and you are engaged with another one or two other entities which requires compliance, there is the opportunity there for compromising integrity and engaging in corruption.
The Nigerian police should be well paid. We think that if you're paid well, it in itself, if you're not paid well, you will look for money because you have to take care of your family. That's the honest truth. So if you want the Nigerian police to focus on their job and not try to cut corners, I think they should be paid a decent salary. We think they should be paid a decent salary.
Our focus was society, and our top issue was systemic inefficiency, and said that a lot of people want speed in the process. For example, you go to pay for your driver's license and you're delayed. Instead of you having to go through the process, you want to pay a fee to speed up the process. You go for your passport, there's delay in the system. You want to speed up the process. So if the system had, if it was efficient in terms that I pay for my passport in a week, which I'm given, I'm able to get it as opposed to maybe 3 months, we will not have this kind of challenges. Thank you.
We discussed a lot. Now take the rigors, the stress Nigerians go through in going abroad. Now, we dare to say that that's not the case of immigrants coming into Nigeria. And we also dare to say the legal status of a lot of immigrants here. You and I know the story. So to us, our top pick is the Nigerian Immigration Service. Integrity should be looked into. Thank you very much.
We noticed that most of the religious society don't talk about, when they talk about prosperity, we notice that people don't really get the full idea. So we suggest that once they talk about or preach about prosperity, they should also talk about integrity and ethical and moral values also. And also we notice that they do give titles to people who have unexplained wealth. So we talked about them focusing more on doing maybe a rigorous research before giving out titles to people. Now for the CSO, we talked about, because CSO seems to be the body that tries to checkmate the work of the government, and we are saying that out of all the CSOs, how many of these CSOs are registered? How many of these CSOs publish their own financial reports? Because if you want to hold the government accountable, you should also be transparent and be open. Thank you.
It is a big business enterprises, and the reason for this is simply because we feel that they have the capacity to catalyze the adoption of integrity by small and medium enterprises. That's because they have this value chain. By making integrity, conducting business with integrity a precondition for being on that value chain, many medium and small enterprises are most likely will most likely want to adopt integrity as a way of doing business, and the fact that the big enterprises are subject to extra jurisdictional law like the UK VAT Act, the US Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, equally puts them in a vantage position or in a position of encouraging the small and medium enterprises to adopt integrity as a way of doing business if they make it a conditionality for getting on their value chain. Thank you.
We debated and discussed that the local governments are very crucial to governance in this country. Being at the grassroots, they are closest to the people, but they are the weakest in the chain. And almost everybody seems to forget that we even have local governments in this country. The focus usually is on the federal and the state government, and people don't really talk much about the local government. So the problem we have identified is that not only that on the barometer, so to say, integrity and corruption, the local governments are very low. But it's not entirely their own making. The state governors are culpable. They don't give them room to operate. So our the agreement is that local government autonomy should be guaranteed as it is stated in the Constitution, right from the time the elections are done into the local government to their finances, and also the quality of manpower at the local government levels are very, very poor. Their staff, their personnel needs to be well educated, well trained, and given the tools to operate and deliver the services expected to them. And lastly, the citizens should be educated. They need to be aware of the responsibilities and the obligations of the local government. What the local government are supposed to do, many people are not aware. We don't know what they do. So the citizens need to be made aware of their responsibility and their obligations. Thank you.
We took a look at the three types of government, and we have the view that the federal government should be focused upon, because they normally dictate the tones for other tiers of government. One, we have the view that the federal government should create an enabling environment for the MSMEs to strive through transparent policies that have integrity. Two, the police should assist in enforcing the laws, and that they should desist from manning illegal roadblocks for the purpose of collecting money, which in turn increase the cost of production to these MSMEs. I will give you an example. If you are moving cassava from Igbora to Songwater, we have more than 10 illegal checking points where we have to be giving 500 naira. That is also adds to our cost of production, and that does not really depict integrity. Three, the federal constitution should contain clauses that limit the powers of the National Assembly to take decisions or create laws that lack integrity, e.g., arbitrarily increasing their own salaries and not subjecting their own budget to public scrutiny. Four, all arms of the government should respect and subject themselves to the rule of law and respect for national dignity. For example, when courts give decision, they are meant to be obeyed. But when you now decide what to obey and what not to obey, then the government is not really setting a good example. Five, the national identity scheme.
Your top priority is what we were hoping for.
Okay, our top priority is the focus on the medium and small enterprises, and that they should create an enabling environment for them to serve, because they are the drivers of the economy. Thank you.
In this group, we've discussed on geography. And in geography, we look at the major states, we narrow it to the major states in the country. We did that because of the transactional volume of transaction that goes on in the state, the population, and looking at those two alone, we look at, for the state, we look at Lagos, Kano, Abuja, and Port Harcourt as a major city. And we narrow it down to Lagos, being a mini Nigeria. And then looking at it, we realize that all these parameters play a role in influencing corruption in the state. And we decide that if government can review their processes, various arms of government in the state can review their processes, and as much as possible automate the process, it will go a long way in checkmating the process that goes on in the state. Thank you.
Our discussion is on business. Our major priority is on the micro economy. We realize that these people forms the major, they are the one that grows up to become small, medium, and the large scale economy. So if integrity is focused on them, it will help all the other chain of the economy. And apart from that, these people also, the small, medium, and the large scale economy businesses also depend on the micro to survive because they depend on their products, what they produce. Thank you.
My team was also given the unenviable task of talking about government. So in the process of discussion, my team was very vocal. And in order not to be accused of hate speech, I'm going to summarize what we said. So we come to the conclusion that all the ills of the society is a result of very poor electoral process that throws up bad leaders at us, and this in turn brings up a lack of justice, equity, and fairness in the handling of the society. So we concluded that there should be we should sanitize the electoral process and bring in some electronic voting issues around it. We discovered that people enjoy inefficiency because inefficiency also enables those who have fraudulent minds to benefit from the society. So that's why our electoral process is still where it is, because if I would do something like they do at AGMs where you use your token to vote and it's showing somewhere immediately, nobody will go and carry a ballot. If you carry a ballot box, we'll be laughing at you because the record is somewhere else already. So it's all those inefficiencies that we said that we need to sanitize, and should also bring some transparency in the allocation of resources to local states and local governments, and that we also need to strengthen our institutions. The poor electoral system also throws up very strong individuals instead of strong institutions. So it means if the road on my street is not good, I'll say, why hasn't Ambode or someone done this? Why, whatever he's doing it and allows us, somebody else should be taking care of little things like fixing of roads. And until we have something like setting up KPIs for somebody monitoring this road, when it starts being a crater, there's no pothole that develops a pothole overnight. It starts from a crater, and then if you start maintaining it from that level, we won't get to the level of a road completely being washed off. So our top priority is sanitizing the electoral process to give us good leaders. Thank you.
We are to look at entity size. Entity size could be defined based on customer, employee, balance sheet, and share capital. However, we've been able to identify employee size as the most significant. Reason being that when you have employees that are not properly regulated, malpractices, issues of corruption can arise. Therefore, we categorize the employees to different sectors. We have the micro as entities with less than 10 staff. The medium, we have entities with 10 to 100. Then we have the large firm, 100 and above. Our focus is on the large firm, where we have above 200 individuals as staff of those entities. When you have more staff, there is issue of compromise. Malpractices is likely. Corruption is inevitable. So therefore, we arrived as employee size as the determinant of entity size that we looked at. We've been able to recommend that control and proper government, corporate governance can be set in place to look at measures to reduce the level of corruption in organizations in Nigeria. And when large firms are made the focus, the little ones can easily fall in line. Large firms should be the focus, and employee size should be the determinant. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll now call on our very faithful rapporteur to give us an idea of the summary of what has been said. We don't need the stories, just the key summary across the table so we can look at what that roadmap is looking like for 2020.
Okay, okay, my name is Helen Adeshola. I work for CBI. Under the various indicators we looked at, I'll start with geography. The first group that worked on geography said they believe that corruption happens more in places where people, where cost of living is high, because people are susceptible to corruption because they have to come up with, they have to deal with the pressures of having to live with the high cost of living in that particular area. So it makes them, go into corrupt practices, so kind of keeping up with the Joneses, as it were. Then second, local government structure, youth, and family. That was the second people that dealt with geography. They felt that all of these issues around the geographical location aids corruption. The third one, we're talking about the governance processes in states encourages corrupt practices, and they were advising that the process should be automated, that it will reduce the occurrence of corruption. Transaction type, we had two tables talk about that. They said the transaction, if the transaction requires them to comply with certain regulations, then they can begin to cut corners in order to meet up with those regulations. So that brings in a case of corruption. The second people talked about service delivery, places where you have to give.
Sorry, it's a vulnerability to corruption.
Yes, okay. Okay, all right, so he said correction, vulnerability to corruption, not that the practices are actually being done, but that it can encourage or it can lead to corruption if they are not watched or curbed. Service delivery is an area also that is prone to corruption under transaction type. So if you're going, for people who go through transactions, in areas where you have to deliver service, there is a possibility that you might engage in corrupt practices. And we looked at entity size. The first group talked about the fact that MSMEs are more prone to corruption in little portions. I think the person was talking about the fact that if at all corruption should occur in small enterprises, they are in little bits and they occur regularly, or they might occur regularly as against big organizations. The second group talked about employee size. He said the employee size, employees that are not properly regulated promotes, there's a possibility that corruption will take place in that kind of environment. He said that they actually focused that corruption in that kind of, in a large corporation, large entities that have over 200 staff. He said the size actually could encourage corrupt practices and advised that control and proper corporate governance practices should be adopted to control occurrence of corruption in this particular entity size. Sector. People that talked about sector, I actually got one person who talked about micro industries. He said they are the bedrock of all other businesses, and what happens here results in what happens in business organizations, because it's a build-up all through the process from the micro to the medium and then to small and then to the large. So that's how the corruption. Then we talk about people that talked about MDAs. The first person talked about Nigerian police, and they were saying that there is a possibility that corrupt practices might occur because the pay is not quite good, and they were encouraging that the pay should be looked into, and recruitment processes should be transparent. There should be training and retraining, not only on the job or how to carry out the job, but also on ethical practices. The other person talked about the Nigerian immigration. He said they are more prone to corruption because of their poor service delivery. He gave an example of obtaining an international passport. The fact that the service deliveries, that there are no automated processes, there are no laid down procedures of how this should happen. So people cut corners in order to get these services done. Petroleum Ministry was the third one. He said they are prone to corrupt practices all through the line. He said from the drilling to the refineries to the subsidies, Department of Petroleum Resources, all of these areas encourage or could encourage corruption. Government, people that talked about government, the first set talked about the fact that all three tiers of government are prone to corruption, but the local governments are more prone. This is because the state governments micromanage the local governments, and he was advising that autonomy of local governments should be encouraged. And the second people that talked on government said that the federal government is more prone to corruption since they dictate the tone. It's like everything flows from the federal government. So I think they are suggesting that, or they are saying that if the federal government is corrupt, then the corruption will flow down to the states and then to the local governments. And the third set group on government talked about poor electoral processes. He said this brings bad leaders into power, and he was advising that they should sanitize the electoral process using electronic voting, transparency in allocation of resources of government, and setting KPIs for performance in government. Business. Big business, the group that talked about business said big enterprises are prone to corruption. Big businesses are prone to corruption as they deal with big or large business sizes. Now, society. First group talked about family as a major determinant, and that I think they were talking about family values. Depending on what values the family believes in, the people in the family could either begin to abhor or be attracted to corrupt practices. Systematic inefficiency. That talked about the fact that the system in itself is inefficient, and so people are not able to do things well. They discussed about the fact that, there is no reward, both for good and for bad. So if you perform badly, there is no reward. If you do good, there is no reward. So people are prone to corruption because, if I see that somebody has erred in a way and he's not being punished, he's being rewarded, then I'll want to do like that as well. And if I'm doing well and I'm not rewarded, I'll want to at least copy somebody who is doing bad and getting a reward, as it were. The last I have on society is the person talked about faith-based organizations and CSOs. He said they should include integrity, especially the faith-based organizations, in their prosperity messages. That people should be aware of the fact that they need to do things well and do the right things instead of just talking about prosperity and making money. That's all I was able to capture.
Please, a better round of applause for our very, very faithful rapporteur who almost captured everything verbatim that was said. I think that this gives us a very clear idea. Are we seeing certain themes coming up? That we have to see something to do with MSMEs. We have to see something to do with local government. We have to see something to do with compliance. What else have I missed? Oh, family as a unit and youth. Yes, then for MDAs, police. We talked police, we talked processes. There was a suggestion of immigration as well, but I think police would probably resonate best with Nigerians generally. And it's good that we have some very key allies on this table. They will show us where the bodies are buried so we can navigate the system better. Okay, before we go on, I would just like to turn the mic over to the gentleman from the police, from NAFDAC, and from NDLEA to say a few words, if they so wish, before we then wrap up our comments. Sir, any words of wisdom for us?
All protocol duly observed. My name is Len Ostello. I'm an Assistant Commissioner of Police. All what I will just say is that every one of us should team up together to raise a better Nigeria and for a better generation coming after us. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
I key into the thoughts too. My name's William Wari Efiok, SA to DG NAFDAC. I just, from this session, I've learned so much, but I do know that Nigerians too need to do best. I know when you hear NAFDAC, you look at SMEs, but we need to do much, much better also as SMEs to get regulatory issues done as we expect. Thank you very much.
A very good morning to the gathering. For us, actually, I must say, we didn't know that this is how this event is going to look like, but honestly, it's very, 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 very rich, eye-opening, quite enlightening. On the issue of integrity, from our own experience, we, and with other services, I must quickly say, we have internal mechanisms that usually check the conduct of officers. But despite that, you know, as, sir? They don't know which service. Oh, okay. National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. We have internal mechanisms that checks the conduct of officers, and it is strictly adhered to. And I see that over nearly every area that we covered here, there is the need to look at the issue of reward and punishment, sanctions, and reward where necessary. We have that kind, and it is quite encouraging. Perhaps some of you, let me just quickly make reference to one thing we do, especially when we have to interact with our foreign collaborators. Officers are put through what is referred to as lie detectors. That's polygraph test. It may not be a perfect system, but at least it will identify where you are inconsistent with what you are saying or your kind of character. Someone from this table talked about automation. And I think that that should be built in. That for everything, we know that morality, building up the personality of the individual starts from the home. But once the person is out of the home, so many evils are happening in our society today. You check back, you find that it's not that people are not from good background, but something happens along the line. So it's got to be a continuous process. The issue of integrity, for us, it's, you know, we keep doing vetting and revetting, checking on officers, seeing whether they are still the way they are improving, or they are going down. But I think most of all, don't say I'm being spiritual. We'll get there by the grace of God.
A round of applause for him, please. Last but not the least, the representative of the chairman of ICPC. Thank you, Ma, for not refusing.
Good afternoon, participants. I actually have a short message from the chairman, if I'm permitted to read. The chairman of the ICPC, Professor Wasonye, is unavoidably absent. He went to attend one national event, and that is why he's not here. He sent his apology. We want to commend the organizers of this August event, the Integrity Organization Limited by Guarantee, for organizing this year regulatory conversation and for choosing the theme, National Integrity Barometer, a roadmap for 2020. ICPC believe that prevention is one of the best ways to fight corruption, and the issue of integrity and ethics are central to preventive strategy. We always believe that the war against corruption cannot be fought by anti-corruption agencies alone. In fact, everybody should be a stakeholder to rid Nigeria of this evil. We also believe that corruption exists in private sector. The fact that the organization has carried out private-led integrity interventions, not only in public sector, but also in private sector, is highly commendable and worthy of emulation. ICPC is ready to partner with this organization, and we are looking forward to a robust collaboration and cooperation. We also request the organization to extend your mandate to our intervention in the constituency project tracking. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, you have an opportunity to give us feedback in the feedback forms that you have, which we hope that you have filled. Although we started late, we have tried to compress the time so that we will still finish as planned. Are we ready with lunch at the back? Well, it's lunchtime anyway. We have to break now. So please, the CSOs who are here, the lady Tolu right at the back has a briefing for you. If you would just see her at the back of the room before you leave here in the end. So it's now time for lunch and networking. Please do not go without participating in the lunch. It's already been paid for, and it would be a big waste if you did that, please. Okay, they say give them 5 minutes. They're setting it up. So we'll do some networking for 5 minutes, and then, okay, yes? Oh, sorry, I'm corrected that people have questions. I thought there were no questions. Apologies. Yes. Oh, a comment. I thought it was questions. Okay.
It's not good to go home with a bad impression. Gentlemen and ladies, welcome. My name is Emmanuel. I represent the Point Mind Leadership from the US. We're global. For over 30 years now, we've been working on the groundwork called the button job with the Nigerian police, immigration. I discovered that many of them have undergone training through the Point Mind Leadership. And we measure more on ethics that works. And some of them that have really changed their character and life, you can't see them on the broad road. If you come down to their desk table, they cannot take bribe from you because they know it's killing. So I want to say for the Nigerian police, I'm a witness there. I'm a police officer. Please quote me right. But I've been doing what I call underground job as a chaplain to them. So a lot of training have been done to them. But the problem we have is that they always want everything free training. For some time now, we're not stopped because it's costing us a lot. So we now apply to the IGP, and it says we should continue the training, but they are waiting when the government will fund it for them to also pay back. So I want to encourage you, if this our integrity group can come in also, I will challenge you. There's a need to help the police more. Because I've discovered everybody saying something here, training, bust out to training on value, both on that of immigration and customs. I want to believe that if you don't train them, don't blame them. Thank you.
The lady beside.
Thank you so much. So my question is, this seems to be a room that covers the sectors and the entities that are required to push for change. But most times when we come up with very great ideas, we never really make sure that it is citizen-centered or grassroots-driven. For any proper social auditing tool to work, it has to be citizen-centered and grassroots-driven. How are the people who these things are meant for involved in making sure that the things meant for them get to them? Because we can do all we can do, but the general public who these things will eventually be affecting or who have to live with these things, if they are not involved, how would we help? Impunity, they say, is one of the biggest problems of accountability and integrity, because people, public officials, you and I, business people who have mandates, think that they do not owe explanations to the people whom they've been called to serve. Oga there was talking about how the National Assembly feels free to, make these rules about their salaries and all that. Do they even know that they can't just do that without consulting the people who send them into the National Assembly? So it's important that we do this with all of us, but it's more important that the public who will be facing these, or who are facing these hardships, who are having to deal with these problems, are more involved and are driving it. Because, for example, if I speak against the military or I speak against any government agency, they can come after me. I'm just one person. Or they can come after my organization and shut me down. But if we have 20,000 organizations who are driving and pushing things, the government can't do that. For example, when they were trying to call back Senator Dino Melaye, I was pushing for it, not because I had a problem with him directly. I was happy because if they successfully did call someone back, then just maybe the people will understand the power they have. And then just maybe when we send politicians there, they know we can also call them back. So it is very important that whenever we have great ideas like this that are already running, that we do not forget. So my question to you now is, what is your plan for making sure that your audience, which is the people, are involved in driving this barometer? Thank you.
For the passionate plea on behalf of the ones who are not in the room. We will start with the ones who are in the room. And we will look, because you have a constituency. Many organizations here have a constituency. So it's not until we bring all the constituents into the room before we're taking decisions that could be helpful to them. But we get the points that you're making. It's a very important point. This is an integrity barometer. I would like to put it to you that even the media is a big constituency we will still have to engage next year. There are so many more constituencies to engage. But to start with, we wanted to have an idea of priorities, some sense of what is important, so we're not doing what we're being accused of, sitting in a room and just deciding on the priorities by ourselves. So this is the first step, and we will continue our consultations with different groups throughout next year. But begin we must, and we must start from somewhere. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we thank you very much for your patience and for forgiving us for the late start, but hopefully we've still got a finish on time or around time. So thank you very much. Please, we're interested in your feedback forms. Please fill the forms because we learn from the forms and we try to improve our engagement based on the feedback that we received. Thank you very much indeed for coming. Thank you. Please, lunch is being set up. Please don't go without lunch.
The theme captures the general conversation around integrity, around rights and responsibilities of government and citizens. So I think this is a good platform to actually identify what those priorities are, to have a conversation about who bears responsibility for what, and how collectively we can all begin to view the conversation from a different lens, not just from people who tell our stories, who give us our statistics, but how do we measure our own performance? How do we begin to identify the areas of weaknesses and risks, because the challenge is ours. So I think this is critical at this point, at this juncture in our national history, where the competing pulls and push of why do you have to have integrity when those who are not, don't have integrity are the ones who are successful? How do we have different role models and different examples for our young people to follow? So I think this is absolutely the right time to have this conversation.
In the current realities of the nation, I believe is apt. The topic is very much relevant because when you look at the happenings in the country, we actually need to imbibe the spirit of integrity, transparency, and honesty in our dealings, both in business and personal lives.
My name is Tokima Bogunje, and I'm the president of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. The theme for today is quite critical to our nation's development, considering that this specific administration has always had a priority policy around anti-corruption and the fight against anti-corruption, and the fact that as a nation we have realized what negative impact this has on our growth, on the quality of services that is being rendered to citizens, and the suffering of the citizens as a result. Today's subject and theme is critical. But what is much more interesting about it is that we're saying that apart from fighting corruption, we need to build integrity. I already mentioned today that there's actually some generations of Nigerians below the age of 30 who cannot even define integrity to you. They don't know what it is because there's not a lot of it hanging around. So building integrity will do a lot for us. First, it will increase the quality of citizenry that we have. It will increase the quality of governance that we have. It will improve commercial transactions. Lagos Chamber is particular about commercial transactions and how we do business. It will improve our status in the Committee of Nations around the world. It will change the perception of Nigeria. All in all, its impact is only going to be positive, and the only way is up.